There are paper dolls.
Look at that.
She has
Really?
paper dolls. Now, okay, this is gonna be a little like risque, but I'm going to undress her now.
Ooh.
So that's what she looks like.
Yeah, very 1950s, right?
Yeah,
That is
That's what they were
absolutely.
wearing. Welcome to Wily Writers. Tonight, our book club is talking about Silvia Moreno-Garcia's Gothic novel, Mexican Gothic. And with me here tonight is Eunice Mcgill, who is my co-host. Eunice, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, I'm Eunice Mcgill. I write as E.S. McGill. You'll find me in anthologies like California Screamin. Angel and I edited deep cuts together, and I'm doing some nonfiction projects lately. So I've got a writing sprints journal out there if you're interested. So nice to be with you tonight.
Thank you. That was great. Yeah, I'm using your book, your writing sprints book, and I'm really loving it.
Thank you.
It's very cool. So, also joining us tonight is another Wiley writer, Bill Bodden. Bill, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, I'm Bill Bodden. I'm a writer of short fiction and horror and dark fantasy aficionado. Um, Bunch of my stuff is out of print, so it's hard to find, but you can check out my blog and my website for details on what is available, and that's at billbodden.com.
BillBodden.com, and all the links for both of them and me will be down below in the description area. So be sure you click on them, friend us, like us, hang out with us. WileyWriters.net is an online community of writers. We're all working together to promote one another and to create opportunities for learning, for camaraderie and group support and friendship. And so, if you're a writer who writes dark fiction, mind you, it's for dark fiction writers, come on by, check it out, and maybe you'll feel like joining us. We would be happy to have you. I am Angel Leigh McCoy. I'm a writer. I have recently published my first trilogy over the last 2 years. It's in the Weirdwood world, and you can find out more information about me at weirdwoodangel.com. That's WYRD woodangel.com. All right. So Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Let's talk about this. Is it time for the presentation?
Yeah, you could show the.
Sure.
Okay. So let me go back to the first page. There we go. Mexican Gothic. We chose this to be our book to read for the month of July. And now we're talking about it. We had several people who have read it and given feedback to us on Facebook and other places. We've been talking about it a little bit among the group. And now we're gathering to do a more public recommendation of it. So, what do you want to talk about first with this? Should we go to the next page here? Or?
It's a lovely cover, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. I was really surprised when I got to look at it zoomed out more because I didn't realize how much detail there was in it until then. Sorry, I've got apparently police cars going by over here. They're not coming for me, I promise. But in the dress, you can see like the toll and the I don't know, embroidery, I guess, on the bodice and the flowers. I mean, I thought this was a drawing, but this is actually a real woman. This is a photograph.
Is it a
Oh,
photograph?
is it?
Yeah, I zoomed it in to look really close. Yeah, it's a photograph.
Did they paint it or just take it, or it looks a little painted? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I suspect it
It kind of
was
does.
it was airbrushed a little bit
Oh,
by an artist in probably in Photoshop or Illustrator. But yeah, you can really tell when you look at it that it's actually a real woman and it's a photograph.
since we're talking about the dress and stuff, did either of you check that first link that in the fodder section? I put a link to her Random House reader's guide that she
Oh,
put
yeah.
together herself. There are paper dolls.
Look at that.
She has
Really?
paper dolls. Now, okay, this is gonna be a little like risque, but I'm going to undress her now.
Ooh.
So that's what she looks like.
Yeah, very 1950s, right?
Yeah,
That is
That's what they were
absolutely.
wearing.
So if
so
you,
you can print those out?
yep, I printed them out. You have to do it on
You
kind of heavy
cut them
paper.
out. Hmm.
It
Sure, sure.
comes with several of the outfits that she talks about because she talks about clothes a lot
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
book. So there's an outfit there. There's a peignoir also right
Mm.
there. The only trick when you cut these out is that you really want to be careful around the neck. You do
Mm.
have to cut it out so that you can slip the little notches around it.
Yeah.
Ah.
I was really afraid I was going to cut her head off. So be careful with that you don't
Right.
cut her head off.
Ah,
But
that
yeah,
would be
one day I,
That's
appropriate for the
very
genre.
cool.
lovely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
So check out her reader's guide that
Wow.
she wrote and put together for Random House.
Yeah, that
For
is posted on the wilywriters.net site on our book recommendation page. And go there and you'll find a link to it. You can download it. There's a really cool article in there also that talks about the dresses.
yes,
I
there is.
think
There's
I think
talk.
that's in there, right? Yeah.
And since we're talking about clothing, it is interesting how Garcia she kind of weaponizes the clothing that the protagonist Noelle wears, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Or Noemi, sorry, Noemi.
Noemi, yeah. She does. The one particular scene where I remember her mentioning the clothes in the book is one time she's going down to dinner with the family and she purposefully chooses something that's a little fancier,
Mhm.
which is kind of a statement, right? She's making a statement that she's worthy of them and maybe even a little better than them. There's a lot of that kind of subtle kind of innuendo, I guess, in the book, the way the character behaves, I've noticed. And I think clothes are definitely one way that she does that, the character.
She's definitely a darker skin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amongst, and at first it's hard to you don't realize it at first, but she is amongst all of these people of British descent.
Right.
So probably amongst all these people, and of course they all think they're superior, which
Yep.
is a big theme in this book, is this idea of eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
and with that in mind, let's talk about that. Um, I've had this criticism of her book, and I was reading an LA Times book review, and they had the same criticism that the author does touch on history and she does touch on science,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't go deep enough. So, what do you guys think, Bill? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the science was there in places, and I thought it it was touched on without being overwhelming. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, she mentioned the scientific name of uh, some plants and some kinds of fungus as we went along, and talked about some eugenics and mentioned some book titles in
Mm-hmm.
passing, and it seemed like it was kind of a smooth uh, transition without taking you out of the story and
Mm-hmm.
going on this rant about a particular scientific topic. I mean, I see
Mm-hmm.
your point about it not her not delving deeply enough into some of the topics, but I think on the other hand, it also it didn't interfere with the storytelling, which I think is a problem many authors have,
Yeah.
doing those asides, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually agreed with the article in that I think she missed some opportunities
Hmm.
to more clearly show how European culture has abused
The native
the
culture,
native Mexicans. Yeah, yeah. The in
indigenous
Thank
people.
you. I forgot the word for a minute. The indigenous peoples. Yeah, and it almost felt superfluous that she mentioned it, except for the fact that she does sort of have this undercurrent of conflict between her and the family, but she's not consistent with it because they talk about her skin color, but then they all want to do her, right? Well,
Yeah,
the guys do, right?
right.
And you know, and but then again, there's this whole idea of, you know, raping the indigenous peoples because you can, right?
And she also gets into the history, and she talks about how, they brought in the local people, and they died in the mines, and they threw them in pits. And
Mm-hmm.
it was mentioned, and I think one of the things is that we just came off of Stephen Graham Jones's the Only Good Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And
Last month's book.
he did the most fantastic job of giving us true Native American indigenous culture. And the way he weaved it in and made it so central to the story was extremely powerful. So there's a series right now. It's on FX. It's brand new. It's called Reservation Dogs.
Mm.
And it's about some teenagers and they're Native American. And when I watch this now, it was as if the Jones book was an instruction manual for watching this. And then some of the, no, a lot of the stereotypes that we have been given about Native Americans over the years really got dashed with that book. And then really dashed again in
Mm-hmm.
this TV series. She's got the word Mexican in the title.
In the
And
title.
I think if you put that in the title, you've got to address it, and you've got to address it strongly. Otherwise it kind of becomes sort of a marketing tool,
Mm-hmm.
or just an,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that it is a
Yeah.
Gothic novel. I mean, is it a Gothic novel or is it a Mexican Gothic novel?
Mm-hmm.
One more thing to say before I be quiet here. um, Maybe it's not her fault.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she had
Mm-hmm.
written a lot of this in,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe editors, publishers took it out and just said, calm it down a little, honey. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to get so
Get so
preachy.
political.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know the whole
Mm-hmm.
story here. Was it publisher or was it author? So we
Mm-hmm.
can't always blame authors.
Yeah.
That's yeah, and I was thinking the same along the same lines, that how much more of that had she included, and they decided to trim it down, so there were just the few instances of Noemi's outrage, especially at the end, of how they treated, when she found out more about how they actually treated the indigenous people in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, I would have thought she would have worked in more of the, when she went into town, of the locals sort of, being a little bit more dismissive of those people because of everything that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of it had happened, in the distant past, that probably not a lot of people were alive who were around then. So I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I, I see your point, but I think she did okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I, I,
I agree with
and
that.
like you said, Eunice, I think it may have been a case where they were trying to tone it down, because in we have to admit we live in very politically charged and politically divisive times. They may have tried to tone it down to widen the potential readership
Mm-hmm.
and not turn people off.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's hard to say
Mm-hmm.
what happened before it went to press.
Mm-hmm. Especially with our border issues these days, right? You
Yeah.
know, there's so many people that are so up in arms about that.
My recollection is that she's been pretty outspoken about, colonialism sorts of issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't
Mm-hmm.
imagine that she wouldn't be just as outspoken in her fiction.
Yeah. So,
Um, do you let's talk about the Gothic canon then. Let's talk about the
mm-hmm.
tropes and all of those things that she put into the book. So what are your thoughts on that?
So for me, I'm a Gothic romance reader from a young age. As a young woman, I really loved Gothic romance novels, and so I read, um, I knew I was going to forget their names. I'm so bad with names. I'm terrible.
Like Margaret Cartland and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, she was more actually like Regency romance
Yeah.
type.
Hmm.
But there was actually I have some on my shelves. Um, I'll get back to you. I'll put them in the description. But there are several authors who are very well known for this type of writing in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. They were writing at that time, which I suspect is why Sylvia chose sort of this time period for her book. Also because, young women were emerging. But some of the Gothic tropes that she uses in her book are, and I apologize for looking at my paper here, sacrificial virgin. There's a new wife who is trapped and getting sick, or trapped and insane. We're not sure which. A spooky man who can barely contain his own sexual urges. There's an old mansion on foggy terrain that is itself sometimes dangerous. The terrain. And like ghostly spooky happenings that you're not sure if they're actually ghosts or if something else is going on, or you know and so she hits all these beats really really well. And as I was telling Bill earlier, it feels like she's very meticulous about doing this, about hitting all the tropes. Everything about this book to me feels very structured, very constructed, and that's not a criticism. If anything, I think it's praise, because she's really thinking about the genre and really trying to clearly sort of hit the story. There are some things that she does that don't fit the tropes, but I'll pass the baton before we
The
go into
question
that.
begs the question then, too
Mm-hmm.
cliche? Bill, you were really excited. I hear
Mm-hmm.
your excitement.
I'm not a good person to answer that particular question because I'm not terribly familiar with Gothic romance, and most of my Gothic horror reading was a really long time ago. So I would beg off on dealing with that particular topic.
Mm-hmm.
She does. She hits all the tropes. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I was reading that she chose the 1950s in Mexico because women didn't have the vote yet. So women were
Right.
still subjugated
Second
at
class
that time.
citizens. Mm-hmm.
Right. So at that time. So the question is, it is a traditional Gothic novel
Mm-hmm.
in every sense. I mean, it's modernized, but it's still a traditional Gothic novel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there is there still a place for that? I mean,
I will admit that when I first started reading it, for like the first, I don't know how many pages, the first big section there, I was convinced that she was going to follow directly in the steps of Bram Stoker. and write it. It was a Dracula novel.
Hmm.
And it almost turned me off the book. I almost lost interest in it because of that. The only reason I stuck with it is because it was our book club thing. And then ultimately, by the time I got to the end, I was glad I had stuck with it because it was well worth the ride. But, you know, there's the 1800s Gothic, there's the 1900 Gothics, and mid-century Gothics. And they're all kind of tied by this thread of dark, you know, spooky castles and women in danger. And, you know, the earlier versions most often had a man as the lead, and, you know, for obvious reasons. And then in the 20th century, it's more often a woman. But that's not actually true in all cases either. But yeah, I don't know. For me, as I was reading it, it was very sentimental in a way. Once I got past that initial "ooh, Dracula" reaction, I hope these aren't vampires. Once I got past that, I was okay. Because it really felt a lot like the books that I read as a young woman that I was really sentimental about and really enjoyed. And so it brought all of that back up for me.
Very traditional. This is very traditional house.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so then, Bill, what got you? Since you're not really familiar with the Gothic, what got you excited? Because
Mm-hmm.
you were really excited. So, what got you excited?
I was excited by the author herself because I read some of her short fiction, which has been Lovecraftian,
Mm.
and I read a previous novel of hers that was about vampires called Certain Dark Things that I highly recommend. Um, uh, but one of the things that is sort of a tangent here. One of the things that really struck me about this novel was uh, the really prevalent theme of isolation.
Mm.
How
That's
you
big
know
and that's big in Gothic. That's big. So
sure,
you
sure,
got it. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting
but
to be a
Mm-hmm.
pro.
Yep.
she did such a good job with that. I mean, it really felt uh, like she was trapped in so many ways, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not only has gone to this manor house, and it's hard to get there, and it's hard to get out
Mm-hmm.
to go anywhere, and she's dependent on other people to get her into town. Um, the isolation of women at the time, particularly in Mexico, but certainly in the U.S. too, of you know how you didn't have as many rights as men did, and you know if it came down to a he said she said situation, they're going to believe the man all the time because women are
Mm-hmm.
hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean that further sort of emphasized that isolation that was going on
Mm-hmm.
in the overall novel. It just that was really powerful and unnerving, and I thought she did a great job conveying that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, women can feel trapped even without those tropes. And I can imagine so many
Mm-hmm.
women around the world, trapped in this patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like being trapped in some kind of horror story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe something that men can't understand. Um,
I
that that
I
kind of feeling.
yeah, I agree.
Trapped in a marriage, even if the spouse is abusive. I mean, men can understand being trapped in a marriage where they're unhappy, but it's a much smaller percentage of men who can understand being trapped in a marriage where the husband is might potentially kill you.
Oh, that's a famous saying that men are afraid that women are going to laugh at them, and women are afraid that men are going to kill them.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
dark. That's dark, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's go on to something else then.
Well,
You
well, hold
mentioned
on for just a
Lovecraft.
second. You know, you're Angel, your assessment of the book, where you early on you thought, oh, this is going to be vampires, and I thought the same thing at first, but I remember having read more about this book before it was released and knew that it wasn't vampires, but it really did have that feeling. And of course, we find out later it's not vampires at
Definitely
all
not vampires.
in the classic sense. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
they're vampiric in a way.
In a way.
Vampiric.
In a
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
yeah,
In a
yeah.
way.
So not
But
yeah,
much
not in the
cooler.
classic sense. And it was slow going for me early on too, because it failed to really grab me, but I pushed through, and by the time I don't know, I mean, by the time she got to the house, then it started to pick up. And by the time I was halfway through the book, then I couldn't, I had a hard time putting it down,
Yeah.
because it was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? What's going on? So, and having read some of her Lovecraftian stuff, I saw a couple of things coming that were sort of big reveals, but the ending totally got me. I was surprised by what was fueling the sort of the undercurrent in the house.
Yeah,
That
we
was
won't
that was a big surprise for me, and that was pretty horrific what it was
It
too.
was, yeah.
That was
spoil it for you
yeah.
guys.
I'm
Yeah, no, we won't spoil
trying
it.
desperately not
If
to
we
spoil
want
it,
to, let's talk
but
about that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Turn off your video right now so we can talk about that.
That's right.
She is a big Lovecraftian. I was telling Angel
Yeah.
that she did her master's thesis on eugenics, women, and Lovecraft.
Oh,
So
really?
fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's also the oh, I can't remember the name of it now. It just fled out of my mind. But
She's
there's
the
a she's the editor of you've got it there, Eunice.
Innsmouth
Free Press,
Free Press. Yep.
Free press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a big Lovecraftian.
which published. I think it was mostly online. Published stories and little sort of fake newspaper articles and little snippets like that, and it was pretty cool. And she's also been editor or co-editor on several, uh, I would say, predominantly Lovecraftian anthologies too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Yeah.
she's definitely got a real solid grounding in that area of a weird or dark fiction.
Once I learned, and I believe, Eunice, you feel the same way. Once I learned how active she's been publishing and how much she actually has out there, I was surprised that I'd never heard of her until StokerCon earlier this year.
It seems like Bill is really familiar with her prior work, but
yeah, but I was not. I'm glad I am now. I'm glad I am now.
how far back did you know about her, Bill?
Probably more than 5 years.
Oh, wow.
It's a long
She's
time.
been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
When I was first really casting around looking for venues to submit writing, the Innsmouth Free Press was mentioned to me by a colleague of mine, Monica Valentinelli, and that's when I discovered her stuff and started finding out more about other things she'd written and trying to get a hold of some of those anthologies.
Well, and you write Lovecraftian, right? Don't you, Bill?
Oh yeah, a lot with all the baggage that's included with that. Yes, yeah, a lot of.
I was the reviews editor at Dark Wisdom magazine for many years.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
Oh yeah, I was the reviews editor, and I had a huge column in there. He used to just let me just ramble on and on. And on. So
nice.
You have any of the old editions? Go in there, and it's like, please edit me. And he's like, no, just write whatever you want to write. So yeah,
kind of the laissez-faire school of editing, huh?
I was like, he's like, you don't have any errors in your writing, so just keep going.
Sure.
right?
Well, I'm sad that I didn't know about her sooner. I wish I had.
Me too.
Well, the beauty of it is now you have a whole vista of things available to you to read.
Hmm.
And I
Do
mean,
you?
a lot of her stuff is set in Mexico because that's her heritage. She lives in Canada, in the Pacific Northwest
Mm-hmm.
now, but yeah, a lot of her stuff is set in Mexico. The Certain Dark
Hmm.
Things it's in Mexico City. Gods of Jade
Cool.
and Shadow I haven't read yet, but that's set in Mexico too. And Signal to Noise I think is also set in Mexico, but I haven't read that either.
Right on. Pretty cool. So I want to talk about feminism
Oh,
Sure.
because I have read several articles about this in preparation for this discussion tonight, where this book is called, let's see, a feminist horror novel.
mm,
Yeah, that was my reaction
oh,
too. I did not feel like it was feminist, and yeah, I don't know what. How does that make you feel? That feminist horror novel,
why not just horror novel? Period. That
right?
discusses themes of feminism. We don't have masculine horror novels, masculinism horror novels, feminist horror novels. You
Yeah,
know what? I always wonder who's writing
yeah.
those reviews. Who wrote
It
that?
was a woman. I checked.
But how are they involved with the genre? If they're not involved
Oh,
with
I
the
don't
genre
know.
and they don't know the scope of the genre, um,
Yeah, yeah.
then
I don't
I
know.
was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
mean,
who the
there's. I didn't actually find anything truly feminist about the book. Unless you count the fact that she fights off the bad guy and manages to escape, and it's a female protagonist. However, she does that with the help of a man. So, and if it weren't for him, she couldn't do it. So,
Okay. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't find it feminist at all.
it's got.
Also, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's got feminist themes to it, but
Yeah.
Um, sort of. I mean, she starts out as like this rich party girl, right? Who's off like, flirting with all the boys and having a good time and wrapping them around her little finger, which I suppose is very feminist and probably common to beautiful girls, right? I wouldn't know anything about that, but she's she's spoiled, coquettish, used to getting her way, and of course by the end of the book she's more mature because she's lived through this terrifying incident, right? And but I don't see feminism in that either. I'd really be interested to know, like, where do you see the feminist themes? Bill, what do you think?
Um, so you mentioned that basically she needs help getting out of the situation again because of the sort of isolation
Mm,
issues that have been set up. But
mm-hmm.
she does a lot of her own rescuing.
Hmm.
I mean, at the very end, she does most of the actual sort of fighting and struggling to get out.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, she's the one who figures out, what to do to sort of bring the entire situation to a climax at the
Mm-hmm.
very end. And when the guy is keeps telling her, don't look, and
Mm-hmm.
and she does, and figures out what to do because she's paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's that seems like my limited experience that goes against the tropes of gothic horror where she rescues herself essentially because the guy that's with her, yeah, he does help her in a bunch of things, but he's not a lot of help. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Also, I mean, in terms of direct action, the trapped bride that she's come to the house to check on,
Mhm.
was pretty isolated. But when she got the opportunity to do some real damage, she took it with both hands and really did it.
Mhm.
Um,
How more feminist than bringing down the patriarchy can you
oh
get?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
seriously,
yeah,
that's literally
yeah,
She did.
what they did is
yeah,
they brought down the patriarchy
yeah.
of
Literally,
the
yeah.
household.
Okay, yeah,
That whole
yeah.
family had
Brown
spent,
girl brings down the white patriarchy.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that
that's
whole
what it comes down to.
family. Yeah, the whole family had spent 300 plus years being dominated by this one guy. And here comes this one chick, just like, I don't think so. Just like, she takes them all
Not
down.
having it. Nope.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah. She
yeah,
smokes in her
the sort of
room, you know.
Mhm.
um, it's hard to say that I totally agree with you. It's hard to say that this is a feminist book per se, but again, like you said, it does have really strong feminist themes, and the protagonist is a woman, and when push comes to shove, she kicks some butt, and she
She doesn't look away,
she
like you
doesn't
said.
look away.
Mhm,
She's
mhm,
she's awkward and undiplomatic through most of the book, and I have to credit that with her youth and her relative inexperience in those sorts of situations. Again, like
mhm,
you said, Angel, she's used to getting her way and wrapping men around her little finger, and
mhm,
this is a situation where that didn't work. So
mhm,
she's got to figure out something else, and she was getting there. It wasn't perfect, but she was getting there, and she you know makes those declarations like, "Oh, you're horrible," kind of things, where if she had been really I think if she had been more experienced, she would have kept her mouth shut and not tipped off that she knew things about them, and that she was going to directly come in conflict with them.
mhm,
She yeah, so I think her experience worked against her in a lot of respects there. But yeah, I think you could say that she is a feminist character, and that like we've been saying, strong feminist themes throughout.
But don't call it a feminist horror novel.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crappy label, and I think that's just lazy reviewing, where you're trying to find some declaration to make
mhm.
How about
about it.
just
And
how about just a good damn horror novel? End of
yeah,
story. Right? Good damn horror novel.
Yeah, yeah,
It does the
absolutely.
genre
yeah,
justice. It
yeah.
does.
It does, because yeah, it does do that. Absolutely.
Because it's a gross, it's got creepy, nasty, gross things in it. So it
Oh
isn't,
yeah,
yeah, it does you.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
Yeah,
it does.
really,
Oh my
really
god.
scary moments.
it isn't like a Scooby-Doo type of thing where it's like, oh, it was nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, it kind of seems like that at the start,
It
but
does.
yeah, then you realize, oh no, you pull the mask off. It's not a guy in a
Oh,
mask.
yeah.
yeah,
It's
It's not the
please
landlord.
no.
kind of yucky to look at. So
I was
Uh,
I was I missed I must have missed earlier when they were. I was surprised at the end when they did more of she sort of had this dream, this vision sort of thing about
mm,
the patriarch and how he had come to be who he was, and I had missed if there was some indication earlier that he had taken that his situation, we'll call it, and moved it to Mexico. I thought he had gone to Mexico and discovered it there and took it over.
oh, yeah.
So that I was initially when I
I thought
when I
that
read
too.
that reveal, I was confused by that. But then there's something at the near the very end where she was having that sort of vision, and saw him dealing with the shaman, and in that she was talking about the place where they were living that was inaccessible part of the time because the sea, it was cut off by the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then I
you're
thought,
right.
wait, they're on a mountain. That's not right. What is that?
So
That's what got me thinking about it. But
they
yeah,
brought the infection with them.
right.
There's symbolism.
Oh,
There's
interesting. Yeah.
there's some symbolism right
The
there.
Yeah.
subtle
Yeah.
subtle sort of colonialism
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
reference there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's
good
interesting.
job.
I thought it came from the mine. I thought that's where it came from, but
No, it had to because it was older. It was almost 400 years old, right? I
yeah.
think they said
Which,
something.
I mean, which is not to say there couldn't have been stuff like that in Mexico. I mean, the Aztecs, the Incas, the
Mm-hmm.
Zapotecs, and the Mixtecs, um, but yeah, on closer reading, that dawned on me. I was like, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
I was confused by that. So neither of you
I
saw
did.
that either.
I didn't think about it until you mentioned it, but I think you're
Mm-mm.
very correct on that. I think they brought that infection with them, which would have been that's a wonderful piece of symbolism right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of symbolism
Oh, there is.
in her book. There's a lot. It was really interesting. Yeah, I read the audiobook, which is I think how I missed that point. Sometimes when you read the audiobook, you don't catch every little thing.
Sure. Well, especially if like you're listening to it in the car and your
Right. Yeah,
attention is
you get
focused on
distracted
other
for a
things.
second and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even if you're at home, if you're writing or doing something else, it'd be easy to for details to slide
Yeah.
slide
Or
past
the
you.
cat comes by and wants petting and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's life. But yeah, she's I don't know if she did it intentionally. She probably did because she's so intentional about everything she does. When
Yeah.
this is a good segue to bring up the fact that she followed the hero's journey in the plot, and I mapped it out. I actually mapped it out. Is it in? No, there's a link
There's a
that
link.
that I couldn't get to. I still am having a hard time getting to those Google Docs for some reason. It's weird.
No.
I don't know what's going on. We can work that out later. But
Okay.
if you just find a map of the hero's journey, and map out the story, it follows almost exactly, like really close.
Huh.
And so I don't know if she used that as her plot skeleton and then applied all the beautiful things to it, or what. But I think she was very intentional in writing this book, and I haven't read any of her others, but I suspect she's like that with all of them. Yeah, I don't think
She
she's a
does strike me
pantser.
as a very very thoughtful
Hmm.
writer that way. So
Hmm.
I would tend to believe that she had done exactly what you suggest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Used
It's interesting.
used a very traditional structure for a very traditional type of story.
Hmm. Yes,
Works
yes.
well.
And it certainly worked well for her. She's what, New York Times bestseller.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I
tons of
I
readers.
just I just thought of something.
Mm,
We were talking about she mentioned a couple of times in the story about how this family brought soil with them from England
Oh.
for
that's
their
what made me
gardening.
think it was a vampire book.
Oh, okay, but
Oh.
yeah, but that further emphasizes that they brought
Because it
what
was
they
in.
caught. They
Yeah,
brought it
Yeah.
with them instead of
yeah,
finding it there.
Yeah, I
yeah.
wish we could talk about that part because I've been reading a lot of articles about
No,
just that thing that they whole family was dealing with. And it's really fascinating about those things. Can't talk about it. But
I
yeah.
know. I'm still
We don't
wondering.
want to spoiler
I
anybody.
know.
We'll
It's
get
like
hate mail if we do that.
Uh,
because it's kind of plausible, what she posits. It's
Hmm.
I've been doing a lot of reading and it's like Yeah, those things they hold memory quite well. So learn stuff that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Th-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who
there's a lot
knows?
of research that they've been doing on stuff like that, and that
Hmm.
the level of communication there is much more sophisticated than we had any idea about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is kind of incredible.
Yeah. It's like
Scary.
we can't like talk about the monster, you know?
I know. Yeah,
We can't
I
tell
know.
you guys what the monster is, so you're
It's
gonna have to.
yeah, and I because of knowing her Lovecraftian background, I had an idea what was going
Yeah.
on,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't a perfect idea. I wasn't totally right. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
got a couple of details, but not the whole
Mm-hmm.
story. So
Her degrees are in science.
yeah,
Not.
yeah.
Yeah. Good for her.
I would love to meet her sometime and talk about just pretty much anything. just just talk to her for a while because she seems like she would be really interesting in a conversation.
Yeah.
We'll shoot her this video and then come invite her for an
For a
interview.
chat,
Yeah.
for a coffee clatch, as they call them.
I would.
I'm in a steampunk book club, we and it happens once a month, and we invite the authors to join us ahead of time
Ah.
for people to ask questions. And the vast majority of the time, it's really nice. I mean, people are really complimentary and supportive, and it's good. The one time we had
Uh-oh.
an author in who was like, several people said, "Well, I don't really like horror, but this was
Oh,
okay," and it was a steampunk horror kind of mashup, and
Oh, wow.
they were still, they were. It's not like anybody was misbehaving or being jerks. It
Mm,
just
mm.
they're honest.
it was not
Yeah,
their
yeah.
cup of tea necessarily. So
Well, that's
what
okay,
I'm getting at
right?
is I think it would be perfectly okay to invite the authors to join us for stuff. I think that would be fun to, it would be great to talk to her. And spoilers would undoubtedly happen
I
much
know.
more
Hmm.
than
I
than
think,
we're
yeah,
trying to avoid now. But
I'd love to do that. I think we could definitely do that once we have a couple more of these under our belt and we get
yeah,
all the tech stuff worked out. I would love to have the author in here with us. I think that would be so cool.
that would be
It would
yeah.
change the dynamic though, so we'd have to keep that in mind. This discussion is very would be very
Honest and
different, yeah, with the author here. So maybe we could do both.
Well,
yeah.
maybe
Hmm.
maybe that's the key is
Hmm.
send her the link to this discussion and then invite her to come for like an interview or a question and
Hmm.
answer session, something.
Hmm. Yeah.
That might be a really good way to handle that. That way
Hmm.
we sort of keep the
Hmm.
dynamic of the discussion and take the pressure off, and then be able to talk to the author later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
Ye-
love to get to know her. I'm ready to read more stuff by her. You,
Me too.
what do you recommend next, Bill? For vampire?
Well,
What?
I liked her vampire novel a lot. It's a
Okay.
modern setting in Mexico City, and it's
Ah.
it's vampires and essentially narco gangs.
Oh, wow. Really?
And it's Certain Dark Things is the name of it.
Certain dark things.
Certain
Okay.
dark things.
Um, sure, I think her most recent is Gods of Jade and Shadow,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and that's dealing with uh, shoot, I'm going to get this wrong. I don't remember if it was Aztec or Inca gods in
Hmm.
my recollection
One
of
of
it
those.
is vague, but it's and again I think it may be a modern setting.
Mhm. Cool.
Um, so yeah, that's I think that's her most recent.
Okay. So start with the vampire one and then read her most recent one.
Well, I start with whatever we want, but
Yeah.
Signal to Noise is about kind of music and pop culture in
Yeah.
uh, and magic in, again, I think it's Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I haven't read that or Gods of Jade and Shadow yet, but I really enjoyed Certain Dark Things. I thought
Mm-hmm.
it brought, I mean, it brought a lot of interesting things to the vampire sort of genre that, you know, some people have incorporated, but they're not. There's not a lot of traditional vampire stuff going on in
Yeah,
it.
that's good. Yeah, I would probably like that. That sounds good. What I was afraid of is that this was just a Dracula clone. So I'm not opposed to vampires.
Yeah,
I just was scared that this was just
Going in
vampires.
that direction, there would just be
sure.
vampire people. I
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not.
didn't see
Okay,
vampire.
good. Yeah,
Vampiric, but not vampire.
but not
novel.
vampires. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yes.
Um,
Cool. Well, guys, shall we call it a night and go
how
do
about your
our?
Wily? Let's do our Wilies. Out of five
Oh, yes.
Wilies, out of five Wilies, what are you gonna rate it? Bill?
1 to 5.
I hate the 1 to 5 system because
I know.
I liked it. Well, it's like on Goodreads, right? 3 stars is I liked it, 4 is really liked it, and 5 is loved it. I really liked it. So
All
I
right.
guess I would give it the same rating I did on Goodreads, 4 stars.
Okay.
Liked it a lot.
Four Wileys. We're doing
Or
Wileys
Wily, or Wily.
because it makes us laugh.
That's right. And it
Eunice, how
burns.
about you?
I'm going for 4.5.
Oh, you big
Wily.
cheater. Okay.
4.5 because
4.5.
I
Well,
thought.
I'm going to do 4.5 too then.
Okay, you can do 4.5.
You
I
can
thought
change.
her execution was excellent. The other half is like, go ahead, give me the cultural stuff, give me the historic stuff. And I hope no one is making her not do that. Like, little lady, settle down now. Don't get into all of that stuff. Don't, oh man, don't do that.
Don't
Let her
express an
do it.
opinion.
Let her do what Stephen Graham Jones. Mexican is in the novel. Let's have it. You know,
Yeah.
I feel richer for the Jones book, being exposed to his culture. Give it to us.
Yes.
That's for the publisher. Give it to us.
Give it to us.
Angel?
Angel?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 4. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed the second half of the book. But I think I agree with Eunice. I wanted more Mexico. I wanted more of that culture. And I think even at times, it felt to me, not being Mexican, I will give a caveat. I am not Mexican. But it felt to me like she was even kind of behaving too Western, the main character in places. And even at times
Too
kind
Anglo.
of too Anglo, yeah, too European, Anglo.
Anglo.
Especially like when her dad has to coerce her to go to see her cousin. That doesn't fit with my idea of what Latino cultures are like, right? What, especially Mexican, they're very family oriented, and the papa, as I understand it, is like in charge, right? Now I could be wrong. I will admit that because I am not Mexican, but you know, he had to promise her he would let her go back to college if she would go and help her cousin. And he let her go alone, unchaperoned, which I found interesting. And I mean, it was the 50s, not the 1990s. So I don't know. There were things like that that just kind of didn't feel Mexican enough to me, in my stupid, probably very biased mind. But
But I think
I have to ding her for it. Yeah.
we're the kind of people who want to be educated. You know, go ahead.
Yes.
We
Yes.
want to be educated.
Mhm.
I'm not afraid of that. Go do it.
Yes.
Educate me.
Yes,
And again,
I
we
want to
don't,
see it.
I mean, none of us being Mexican
Hmm.
don't really have a good handle on what that culture was like. So maybe this is entirely accurate. Mexico City is a huge metropolitan city and has been for many, many years.
Hmm.
So, it's
Hmm.
entirely conceivable that this is a real accurate snapshot of, a young
Yeah.
socialite who's a wealthy family. She has a lot more leisure time, and I
Hmm.
my impression is that her immediate family is kind of small, like it's just her and her brother and her parents. It's not a
Hmm.
not a big family, but and then this other characters are cousin, who they were obviously pretty close. So yeah, I mean, she's kind of I think it was the point is she was kind of more self-absorbed early on, and it's sort
Yeah.
of part of her hero's journey, as you say, is being a little more mature and developing more as a person.
Hmm.
So I'm reluctant to say this isn't Mexican because I
Right.
have
Yeah.
no idea
Yeah.
if it is or not. But
Hmm.
I mean I take your point, and like Eunice was
Hmm.
saying, yeah, we're the kind of readers who want
Yeah.
to be educated more about the culture. But is that her the audience she's aiming for? Probably not. So she might have been toning things down a little bit to make it more identifiable and more accessible.
Yeah.
And that's why she only got 4.5 Wilies.
Or four in
All
my
right, fair
case.
enough.
Or only 4
Fair enough.
Wilies.
Because I felt
But
that
they're
loss even more than you guys did. I really felt that loss. I was really going into the book wanting a glimpse of Mexican culture
and history,
and history.
and if
Hmm.
the culture part is accurate, then there just needed to be more of the history
Hmm.
of colonialism and
Hmm. And more showing, not telling of that stuff. There was a lot of exposition about history and the eugenics and that sort of thing, and not a lot, and the mining. And I would have liked to have seen more of that. But I don't know how she could have done it and written the same book. So it would have
well,
been a very different book. So it's not a huge criticism.
no, no,
She wrote the book that she meant to write. So that's good. And it's
hopefully
entertaining as hell.
it is. All right.
Call it a night, guys.
Yep, that's it.
We got any more piss and vinegar in us?
I'm good. But Bill,
Okay.
Plenty, but not about this.
All right. All right.
I think we're good.
So, you've been listening to Wily Writers talking about Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And you can find us at wilywriters.net. We are a community of writers. We are very focused on improving our craft, on group promotions, and on just having a good time. So come by and check us out and join us if you'd like. You're more than welcome. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.